And now, it's time for the Lakeside Drive F1 podcast. Here are your hosts and my supreme leaders, James Baldwin, Campy, and Freya Brolsma.
Yes, only the good action happened on Saturday morning. What else happened? I don't know. Miami, I guess, a Grand Prix occurred. Daniel Ricciardo's not washed. Oscar Piastri was robbed. And yes, Lando Norris can win a Formula One Grand Prix. Just ask Sky F1's lie detector and then actually himself, because he did actually win a Grand Prix. Yes, it is Miami. Yes, we're back because we didn't preview it thanks to technical gremlins, but we're here to review it. And it means that I'm joined by my friends and yours, the very long-distance runner, Thomas J. Camp. Hello, mate.
G'day, mate. Hello, Freya. How are you?
Absolutely ridiculous, of course, because it's Freya Brolsma, who is recovered from a marathon.
Yay! Kudos claps myself.
Now you're snapping yourself. Kudos. Oh, my God. Well, good to be back. Sorry to everyone for not being here last week. I was too busy drinking in McLaren Vale, and these two had some technical issues. Campy,
we did an episode, to be fair. We did an episode.
If you'd like to know how Campy sounded, if you sneeze into a plastic bag, that's how it sounded. It just sounded just really no good. Anyway, it is what it is. Let us just take a couple of breaths, shall we, everybody? And I mean everybody in the Discord as well, because it's okay. It's not the end of the world. Lando Norris has won a Grand Prix, and there's plenty of people inside the New Zealand team, can't help myself, in the New Zealand team led by an American who will be very happy with their efforts to turn around what was a significant 12-month gap between finishing some 3 minutes behind Red Bull to finishing in front of a Red Bull. Safety cars, of course, came into it, and a whole bunch of new upgrades, 10 of them, in fact, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Let's talk first, though, about why you're all here, why you're all listening. Now, I didn't see the very beginning, Campy, of the broadcast. I thought I'd hold it for just the race, and I saw plenty of the British broadcast afterwards. Did you see a national anthem?
I did. I can't remember his name. I'm looking at his face. Marco someone.
Mark Anthony.
Look, Mark Anthony, that's the one. Look.
Marco Anthony.
This is the second or third greatest anthem on the planet, and it is amazing. It's not the best version that I've ever heard this morning, but it was very good, very laid back. I think all these performers are trying to do the guy who did the Super Bowl this year. What's his name? The country guy. Freya, what are we talking about? Jeez, it's our favourite.
This year, you're talking about Chris Stapleton. He was last year's.
Chris Stapleton, last year. Chris Stapleton, sorry. So they're just trying to sit back and do it like that. But look, still excellent. And there was lots of people in the crowd, hand on their heart, hats off, very respectful.
Gives you the feels.
Gives me the feels. I did enjoy it, so it was very good, very good.
Yep, cool. Was there a fly past?
I did not see one, no.
I didn't see one.
This is interesting for the
SpaceX
US.
rocket launching somewhere close by, probably. That'll do.
Yeah.
And F-22s flying around. Yes, Freya.
It's so frustrating because it's such a fantastic anthem, and it's got that perfect cue at the end when and they hit free and you're just waiting for something to rocket over. It is just written for this type of spectacle, and when you don't get that flyover, oh my goodness, it's so anticlimactic, but it's such a great anthem. But yeah, it's just primed for it. It's got the gap, and you just didn't happen. Oh, so it's so sad. Such a missed opportunity.
They got 3 of them each year. Come on, guys. You could do at least one. Coda, maybe. We'll see what happens there. All right, let's go to our Discord comment of the week. Now, I am pulling Ross out of the bin for this because it was good, although Norris ended up winning. But when Piastri got out in front, as he deserved to be there after a cracking start, Ross said, "I'm sure Norris will be asking for his place soon, despite not being right behind him." Yeah. Which is true, although we never had to be put through the suffering of this for the race, at least. Freya, who did you find?
I have one which goes to a combination of Tilly Willy and Ross collectively. It's actually from last week, but we didn't get to air it. And so I'm going to say it now. And this is an interaction. Tilly Willy saying, "Live by the social media sword," and Ross responding, die by the sharp laminated corners of the paddock pass. And that's for you, James.
Oh, he's walked away.
They don't look that sharp, do they?
I
I've
have
got two
not
of them. I don't
laughed that
know.
hard in a while. Ross, I'm
gonna hang
well and
these
truly
here.
out of the bin for me. I gave a really audible chuckle with a few knee slapping moments there in response.
I've put it on my IHANA hat, which we'll talk about
Shall
that
I
one a little
hang
bit.
my medal up as well? Is that what we're doing here? Is that the game?
Yes, I didn't have to run for that, thank God. Because I wouldn't if they're like, James, you have to run a marathon to get paddock pass. Oh, watching from the pub. Bye. Thanks for asking, though. Never run in my
Campy.
entire life. Campy, who did you have?
Oh, I cannot contribute this week.
Oh,
because
for God's sake, man. I mean, how high every
sake.
week we do this
Come
fucking
on.
segment. God's sake.
Campy.
You are the most hopeless person in the world. There has been so many comments in the
So
last little
much
bit
content.
that you would have absolutely loved. Absolutely loved. Nothing. You couldn't even bother logging in, could you?
No,
Oh,
sorry.
my Lord.
I will promise
Oh,
to do
goodness.
it this week, listener. I'll have 3. I'll do all
No, you
3
won't.
for you guys next week.
I'm going to do
Ridiculous.
one for Campy.
On your
I'm not going to be
behalf?
able
Excellent.
to
Good.
quote it precisely, but I was about to make a similar joke and then somebody else said it, so I was like, I'll leave that to you, which was in response to seeing Trump in the McLaren garage. And I think it was Anna who said, oh, you're fitting right in there with the orange tee, bloody Trump. So he did look right at home. He is more orange than our uniforms. So Anna, I appreciated that a lot.
Yeah.
Well, he
was
had
it?
one voter there today, Danica Patrick.
Yeah.
So that's
That's
Oh,
why there's
my
no
goodness.
flyovers because she'll start ranting about the fact that they're actually chemtrails. What government are we talking about?
Oh, goodness
good,
me.
good.
We are
the deep state.
unhinged today. I like it. I'm here for being unhinged. All right. Well, we didn't have any predictions, which is good because none of us would have got it right. Or maybe you did, but I didn't hear that far into the episode. But none of us probably put Lando first. Certainly Campy wouldn't have put him on the... In fact, Campy would have said Oscar, Daniel, and Fernando in your prediction, right? Yeah.
That's what we want. Almost came true Saturday morning.
Lewis last and Ocon also last. Double lasts. So anyway, we'll skip that for now. But let's get into team by team analysis, shall we? Because many races, many qualifying sessions, and more broadly, I think, actually, before we get into it, let's just have a look at Miami more generally, because it's the third year, I think, now that we've had this Grand Prix. Things have settled down a little bit now with it all. And to be honest, racing was pretty good. Campy, how did you see this track as a player in the bigger, schedule for 2024?
Yeah, look, I think it's iconic. I think it's going to be a race that we look forward to going to every year. It's the 4th M. I spoke about the 3 M's last week, Melbourne, Montreal and Monaco. And Miami's the 4th M in this calendar now. So, yeah, it was great. You know what? And I'm going to say it, sprint weekend should be like this every weekend.
Ooh.
I agree.
Yeah, I was a bit of a purist, but the last 2 weekends, it is excellent to have something to look to on Friday. Saturday is cram-packed with just everything that you could possibly want on track. Cram-packed. Sorry, jeez. It is Monday morning. Sorry, team. But you guys are used to that. Yeah, look, I'm for it. I'm all for it. So great racing every session now. There's something you expect something to happen, which is exciting.
Freya, for you?
Yeah, look, I like it. I wouldn't go so far as to say every weekend because I think there's just some track designs and layouts and some of them because of the length of their pit lane and things like that I don't think this is well suited to. I think there's like the ones that are much shorter tracks. I don't know. I think it works for some track layouts. I don't think it works for others. And I sometimes feel like there's still that element of what does a sprint race mean? Yes, we've got some points in there now and that type of thing, but if we're going to make it really if it's going to become a consistent part of the calendar at 6 or more races a year, I think it needs to be more meaningful. That's my one thing, is that I'm like, it's a win, but it's not a real win. It's a race, but it's not a race. And I was like, just be confident, be clear on what you want the role of these weekend layouts to play in the championship structure, because to me, I don't think it's meaningful enough. But I do agree that, on-track action in a race format, it's obviously far more entertaining than watching another free practice where we don't quite know what we're watching and that type of thing. So, yeah, I'm half sold on it. I do like it, but not every weekend.
I'll pick up on what Jensen Button said, that the way that it makes it exciting for Saturday is because you only have one practice session. It mixes up the results in qualifying for the sprint.
Yeah.
And we've seen, Daniel do an incredible job in qualifying and in the sprint able to hold off Ferrari Carlos Sainz, because there's different factors that can play in a shorter race with a different tyre compound for different cars. And it allows drivers like Daniel and others down the grid too, someone like Yuki too, who made some phenomenal passes with Hamilton and everything else, although we'll talk a little bit more about Magnussen and Hamilton later. Overall, it just mixes it up. It makes it less boring, I think. And we talked a little bit, I think, last year about how does F1 take it to the next level, pull itself out of the existing rut that it has. I think this is a really good way of doing it. And back-to-back sprint weekends too, although I wasn't a big fan of the idea beforehand going in, I think it absolutely worked. It absolutely crushed it because it made so many more headlines through the course of the weekend and better highlight packages than just some practices. So anyway, I'm with you, Campy. I think let's see where the next one is. How the next one goes, which is obviously in a couple of races' time. Let's go through, though, team-by-team analysis. I'm going to start at the very back of the pack with Williams. Many figures to go through here. So Logan Sargent qualified for the sprint in 19th, finished in 10th for the sprint. Qualified the race in 17th, finished in 20th, of course, is taken out at his home Grand Prix. Alex Albon qualified 20th for the sprint, so Sargent did out-qualify Albon in something this year. It's very good for him. Albon finished 13th in the sprint, qualified 14th for the Grand Prix, finished 19th after a massive lock-up. Claire Williams was at the track today, and I'm not sure if that was a good or a bad thing for the team in terms of a luck omen, but it was good to see her back in the paddock.
Oh, I was glad to see her face. But like you said, I think they started getting a few little demons of Williams past, and I'm not sure if that was brought – obviously it wasn't brought on by her presence, but it's an amusing coincidence nonetheless. Look, a bit of a grim weekend for them, to be entirely honest. Like Albon looked proper kind of sad after the sprint. Like that was – for somebody who is – I really like his interviews. He's always really honest. He really tries to tell you how it felt in a really clear way. And it's just very interesting when you do see him being a bit more obviously kind of brought down by a performance, because he's the first one to be really just realistic about the car and where they're at. He'll say, these are the tracks I think we could do well at. These ones, look, we're not going to be in Q3. We're just not, because our car, that track, this, that, and the other, he's just very aware of what's possible. And I always really appreciate his interviews. It was just very interesting seeing him after Saturday in particular. It was obviously just, a really rough day for them. And I think, this weekend overall, especially when you look at it on paper and when you look at it in the race as well, just not so great, which is a real shame for them. I think we like to see Williams doing well, and of course with Claire there, it would have been great for them to have a good performance respective to how they can sometimes go. But pretty disappointing. And as somebody said in our Discord, I think we've seen Sargent kind of put the final nail in the coffin there this weekend. Like it was a difficult one with his incident today. It almost didn't matter if it was his fault or not. The fact that he was involved in another incident that big, that's a done deal, I think. And I've tried to be really optimistic for him.
I don't agree, I don't think, because Kevin Magnussen passing at that point was the stupidest place on the track to do it. And I agree. I agree with you. Logan's done, but I don't think that the incident is necessarily his fault. To the point where Max Verstappen was like, hey, in the post-race, at least they've got a new chassis now.
I don't. Yeah, well, exactly. And look, I'm not saying I think it's his fault. It's more the fact that his involvement in yet another incident, and you kind of think about the visuals and the team and where they needed him to be, which was not there fighting with Magnussen at that point, right? So it's just like I said, I think he's done though.
Campy, it is a very slow progression back to the back of the grid for this team, which is a shame, but it just generally feels like to me that this is now plumb last for them. And as Freya said, Alex Albon cut a really despondent figure this weekend. Logan Sargent, was on the radio in qualifying saying, please, begging his team to have been told that he got out of Q1. Of course, he didn't. And it's just, it lacks this positive vibe, doesn't it?
Oh, I think they have performed somewhat well this year so far. I think this track did not suit their car at all. They love a long straight. They love, where they can, we know their car's slippery. It doesn't run massive amounts of downforce like the other cars. And when it gets on a long straight like a Baku or the Chinese Grand Prix, we see some genuine pace out of them. So I think it was probably a bit more track specific this weekend. But as for Sargent, look, we know he's not going on in the sport in 3 or 4 years into the future. Whether he's here for the rest of the year or someone replaces him mid-year, who knows? I think that decision's in most people's mind is settled. I actually thought the Magnussen crash today was 100% solely Magnussen's fault. He's been in a mood all weekend, although he technically didn't do anything wrong, and he held his line and he didn't go to the right to stay, he could have avoided that incident. And it was, in my mind, the pass was made and Sargent didn't really do anything wrong other than maybe give another foot of a gap to Magnussen. But Magnussen, I just thought it was just, look, I like K-Mag. He drives aggressive, but I just think it was solely his fault. And that accident from his point of view was avoidable because there was so much space to just come off the track. Although he technically didn't even do anything wrong, held his line and was supposed to be given room. It was a rookie juvenile, a man that's frustrated and doesn't want to let anyone past him. And it's unfortunate for Sargent, but he continues to find himself in this position.
Yeah, well, I think we discussed earlier in the year, Campy, that Logan probably doesn't have a future in this sport, which is sad for him, but this is Formula One, I suppose. Sauber first before that. Valtteri Bottas qualified 18th of the sprint, finished 14th, qualified and finished 16th in the Grand Prix. Zhou Guanyu qualified 17th of the sprint and then finished 11th and then qualified 20th. Ended up starting a little bit further ahead than that because of Daniel Ricciardo's penalty. Finished in 14th. This is a team which is completely changing. Valtteri Bottas was pissed at the beginning of Miami. His race engineer was changed without him being told. His race engineer caused him to have a grid penalty in the sprint because he just did not update him. The fact that there was a car rapidly approaching. Obviously, Hülkenberg has been signed, which was a surprise to both of those drivers. Obviously, they know that Carlos Sainz is there. So it almost felt like, from what I was reading in the press transcripts, Valtteri has almost said, do you know what? I actually don't think I want to be here next year. It feels that way in terms of, and fair enough too, if you're not going to be respected enough by the team to be told simple things like your race engineer is changing over. But Campy, this is a team that is going to become Audi. So for someone like Nico Hülkenberg, which we can talk a little bit more about next week, but there will be an influx of money. It will be an OEM manufacturer, and so there will be light at the end of the tunnel, but it's not going to make it any easier for the team in bright green to be happy about being at each race weekend.
Yeah, look, organisations are always going to change and I think Audi is jumping the gun a bit. They don't have full control of that team at the moment. I know it's contractual, but 2026 they got their brands on the car. But I think next year you'll see some massive changes. But they might be bringing that forward. It's unfortunate. We love Valtteri. I think he's proved himself over a decade plus of racing that he's more than capable. Give him a car that can perform and he'll do the job most weeks. This is a team that struggled with pit stops this year and guns and stuff. It was supposed to be fixed this weekend, and I didn't see any problems with the wheel gun issues that they've had previously. But I think communication is important to a guy like Valtteri at this stage of his career. He's a veteran, and he doesn't have the results like a Lewis Hamilton or a Seb Vettel, but he's very much become that almost a father figure of the sport. And I just think these guys, you've got to respect them within an organisation, making changes like that and not knowing about it at the level of this sport and the professionalism that we expect everywhere. I cannot believe that they made some of these decisions, but interesting. The car wasn't overly quick. They seem to be in that train of the RBs, the HAASes and the Williams and the Alpines, and unless you get out in front in qualifying, there's not much they can do. They're just sort of stuck in these trains and they're fighting really hard for every position in that 10th to 20th sort of arena. So, yeah, look, tough weekend for them, but they'll bounce back. Valtteri will get results at times, so that's good.
He really will. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a moment. And this episode, very excitingly, is brought to you by our friends at IHANA. So technically by Valtteri Bottas. Isn't that exciting? Because I visited Valtteri's IHANA partnership with Oliver's Teranga and McLaren Vale last week. Hello to Sam. Thank you for listening. And, of course, the whole Oliver's Teranga team. And I shot some content with them. I loved it. It's tasted the wine, tasted all of their wines. All of their wines are bloody delicious. But the IHANA wine especially is very, very good. And to help them get the word out there to our Australian F1 network, if you're an F1 person and you want a gift for someone, genuinely a very, very beautiful gift. It comes in a beautiful packed box, 2 bottles. It's very affordable considering the actual quality of the wine in the bottle. And if you're a wine person, it is bloody delicious. This is premium McLaren Vale Shiraz. You know what it tastes like. It's slightly different because Valtteri likes a slightly more elevated, lifted nose on the wine. That is for my wine wanker friends. And it certainly sings through. It really does. So if you want to get involved in that awesome little community and an operation, and it's not like, I'd say this as nicely as I can, it's not like DR3. It's not like Daniel and a big organisation. This is Valtteri and Tiffany went along to a kick-ass winery in McLaren Vale. They tasted the wines. They went 3 times, and then Valtteri got the confidence enough to ask if they could do a little collaboration, and they went, we'll think about it. So it wasn't like, oh, yes, immediately, let's go. But it's turned into something beautiful, and it's a family-run operation. Do yourself a favour if you want to do that. Go to the IHANA website. We'll link this in below. And Lakeside Drive listeners will get free shipping all across Australia. So it's Australia only, 18 plus, of course. But use the code Lakeside Drive at the IHANA website for free shipping. You genuinely won't regret it. It's 2 bottles in a pack. So you can drink one now and gift the other one or keep it for 5 years. It's only going to get better. Massive shout out to them because I had such a great time. I really, really did love spending time with those guys. All right. Let's keep going because, Freya, I want you to dissect what the hell Kevin Magnussen is doing. Put on the Freya Brolsma doctorate of being Freya Brolsma as just to round that up
That's
nicely.
the only doctorate I've got.
That's right. No, doctorate of running marathons and moving house whilst being very ill. That is your current doctorate. Did you run a marathon, Freya Brolsma? Look, let's talk firstly about, yes, you will. Nico Hülkenberg is doing very well. He's very clearly the top driver in this team. He's out the door. So that's okay. Kevin Magnussen, though, is, I think, fighting for his seat because of the other options that are now on the market. He doesn't have a contract for next year. Ollie Behrman is all but sort of guaranteed, apparently, to be in that position, in one of the positions, or in Hülkenberg's position at least. So what is Kevin doing, Freya? Because he does seem to be sometimes saying, no, I'm here for the team. I'm going to drive like an idiot, or to quote him, use these stupid tactics like I did in Jeddah. Thank you, brain, for working. And that's what he said, stupid tactics to try and help the team along in Nico Hülkenberg. But surely he's penalty points. I'm still waiting to record the other podcast because we don't know yet the outcome of the penalty point situation. He had 40 seconds worth of time penalties applied out of the sprint. What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, right? Because it's one of those moments where his words and his behaviours are not necessarily aligning terribly well, in that he's saying, I'm here for the team, I'll do what I need to do for the team. Hulkenberg needs to also behave like a team. But then you also go, well, is driving in the way that you have been driving what is actually best for the team that you so frequently referencing? And so, I don't know, there's some incongruence there for me between what he's saying and what he seems to want and what I'm sure he does want for his career, but then what is taking over for him when he is on track. And so potentially it is one of those things where you go, he really wants a seat for next year. He's trying to really push the limit. He's willing to sacrifice a couple of penalties here and there to protect Hülkenberg, who I think we all can all agree has kind of outperformed him and has that lead driver role within the team at the moment. But is he too far over the edge there when it comes to what is acceptable behaviour on both off and on track, quite frankly, and is that actually in the service of the broader team, to say it one more time, and what they can collectively achieve. And so I'm just not sure he's getting the balance right between showing what experience and really clever driving can bring to a team. I need a new word. But you look at someone, for example, like I'm not going to necessarily compare the driving ability of someone like K-Mag and Fernando Alonso, but Alonso is really showing what experience can bring and the value of an experienced driver when it comes to his really clever and strategic driving style under pressure, under unusual racing circumstances where it's not necessarily about the pace of the car or, who is necessarily in a superior vehicle as much as your ability to read the moves of the car behind you before they have done them and those types of things. That's the value of experience, right? And K-Mag is not driving like an experienced driver at the moment, I don't think. And so I think what he really needs to do is go, what are my strengths? How can I actually best put those into action and show the value that I bring? Because currently all you are bringing is penalties. If he wants a position on this team for next year, I think there's some adjusting that needs to happen. I'm all for kind of going out there and doing what needs to be done. And sometimes you're going to be slightly on the cusp of, should that have been investigated or that type of thing. That just shows that you're pushing it and you're willing to use all of the rules and regulations to your advantage because you know where the limitations and even the gaps are in those. That's not this in my view. I think it's not as strategic as that, quite frankly.
Campy?
I think K-Mag has always driven like this. I think there's clearly some frustration. And the stewards love giving him a penalty for the smallest thing. But we look at the start in the sprint race and Lewis Hamilton coming up the inside and taking out some cars. How did he not get a penalty for that? So
wasn't even investigated.
Look, I don't think there's. I don't want to say there's bias towards a 8-time, 7-time world champion.
Go on, Fernando. Tell me more, Fernando.
To K-Mag. But, look, I think he's just frustrated. I think he knows his time may be limited in this sport, potentially the organisation too. Potentially the organisation, not so much the sport. He may get another drive somewhere else. But, he's a bit frustrated, clearly. And I think the sprint race, he played a bit more of the game, but I just think today was just a man that is very, very frustrated.
So about Alpine now. In qualifying sprint, Gasly got 16th. He finished 9th in the sprint, qualified and finished the race in 12th. Ocon qualified 13th in the sprint, finished 15th. Qualified 13th in the race and finished 10th. And championship point finally for Alpine. The guy who just left McLaren after just being put in McLaren has gone to Alpine. His name escapes me because I've just remembered that story as I've read Alpine. That's how much I think about them often. I don't. So that's the whole thing. And that whole structure is still in significant flux. So it'll be interesting to see if they can start progressing at all this year. But championship point means the goods finally for them. And it drags them out of that pack of three that they were in with Sauber and Williams of not scoring anything so far this year. I don't think there's much to say about them. So let's keep going to Aston Martin because Fernando Alonso, he had a terrible weekend. Lance Stroll had a slightly better weekend than Fernando Alonso, but of course was taken out by Fernando Alonso because of Lewis Hamilton absolutely sending it up on the inside and receiving no penalty for doing so. The stewards did say after the significant investigation that they couldn't find the one driver responsible for the accidents or any one accident. So Fernando, was not happy with that. In fact, actually, he wasn't happy before that. He spoke to our friend Christine GZ at DAZN and basically said, if I did that, I'd get a penalty. Lewis doesn't do it, doesn't get a penalty. I'm concerned that this is a thing for the FIA having maybe bias towards one nationality over another. And I, quote unquote, I need to protect the future of Spanish drivers. So that was the whole thing. He was pissed, absolutely pissed about it. And rightly so, because, you know, he took out Lance Stroll, who didn't realise Fernando was suddenly there because of Lewis. So anyway, Aston Martin, though, Campy, it wasn't really a good package weekend for them because they've lost a lot of pace considering where they were in the field to McLaren.
Yeah, I think they're still – I'm not sure. The Works Mercedes team and Aston Martin, both the same engines, they sort of yo-yo with each other. This weekend, clearly the Mercedes team was better than the Aston Martin team, and they just struggled all weekend, really. I mean, Alonso got out-qualified by Sir Lancelot. So, look, not a great weekend when you're getting out-qualified by that guy, but frustration in that sprint race. I totally understand where Fernando's coming from. I don't think it's a nationality thing. I think it's it's definitely not a Spanish versus British thing at all. But there may be some bias there. And if the stewards say things like, "Oh, we don't know who the instigator or what caused that incident," they are blindly telling lies, which sometimes this organisation at F1 can do at times. So squarely Lewis's fault, went in way too hot, locked up. Almost as bad as what Checo almost did this morning off the start. So, look, struggles for Aston. I think they're probably fourth or fifth best, and they're fighting with Alonso in that car. He will always put them in positions that it shouldn't be and get the majority of points for the team this year. But, hey, Lancelot, you got to credit where credit is due. I've never out-qualified Fernando Alonso in anything. I'm not sure I ever will. So celebrating the small wins for Sir Lancelot. He maybe had a good weekend this weekend.
Yeah, Freya, I mean, it is one in however many weekends for him, but there's so many conversations going on. Again, it's hard not to really talk about this Adrian Newey thing, but there's conversations about where he might go next. And if he was to go to somewhere like Aston Martin, would someone like Max Verstappen consider following him? If so, then I'm sure Lawrence Stroll would be very glad to disown his son very suddenly, and Max Verstappen Stroll would be welcomed dearly into the family.
It's interesting where that cutoff is, that question of going, who would it take for Lawrence Stroll to get rid of him? It's like, okay, would it be for, I don't know, Sainz? Probably not. Leclerc? Maybe. Max? Absolutely. Like, yeah, that's right. This is how much I love you, and here's who I love more than you. That is what's going on here, isn't it?
I love performance more than you, son.
It's so bizarre to me that we have this driver who's, you know, is the only one really who's like completely opaque when it comes to how long are you going to drive for? What's the relationship of your contract? Got a contract? I don't know. Like, just I find it so bizarre that this even exists. And I can't help but laugh, because when you've got so many people in the background who are working their backside off for a drive, and we're sitting here going, oh, one weekend you did the thing sort of okay. It's just not enough. Not when you've got a team that is investing so much in trying to be on podiums every single weekend. And you can imagine the lengths they are going to try and get Adrian Newey to join them and work with them for 2026, especially considering their engine deal and his familiarity with how that's all going to work. And it's but I said this to Campy in our alleged episode last weekend, which was that I wonder from Adrian Newey's perspective, is he going to want to work with decent drivers? You know, who would he say is worthy of his kind of output? You know, it's like, well, what's the point in designing the most incredible aero package if you're going to think
there he goes the other direction. Have a kitten.
I apologise.
They said he won't be needy at all.
If I'm going to put all of this work and effort into it, you need to make sure that you get the best drivers that you possibly can. And let's be real, have you got those right now? Sir, you do not.
What are you doing, Kat? What's your plan? Would you like to say hello to Freya?
For those on YouTube, this is an excellent scene. Hello, you're fluffy.
You can. Here's the latest edition. This is a live version of Lakeside Drive.
A live version
Cats
of
and
Lakeside
Dogs.
Drive Cats and Dogs. Go get Bonnie.
Off you go, mate. Kenny is at my feet too, but I don't want to move my camera around. All right,
princess.
let's keep. Oh,
Hello.
I like just
darling.
immediately licking the microphone.
Hello.
Daddy.
Oh, she's
Daddy
a
loves you.
natural.
Daddy
I already
loves
knew
you.
it.
Lance, Bonnie,
Yes,
Stroll.
I just referred to myself as Daddy too.
Help!
Horrendous.
Help! I need an
Horrendous.
adult. I need an adult.
None of those here.
RB, quick, let's move on. Danny Rick, it's not washed. Shut the fuck up, everyone. Stop being such an incorrect person. That's it. That's my whole point. I'm sick of the toxicity of new F1 fans because the old ones weren't like this. And I'm going to say it. And I'm going to do a whole piece on the toxicity of F1 fans at the moment in social media and why everyone targeted Daniel Ricciardo so harshly. So that'll be a long form video coming out at some point in the next couple of weeks as I put that together because that's how pissed off I am about it. I'm going to waste my time producing a whole bloody video about it because that's what I do. Anyway, fantastic weekend for RB. They've got some upgrades. They're going in the right direction. They've broken away, I think, from that trailing mid-pack from the front five. And this is a phenomenal drive from both drivers. Danny Rick in the sprint. Outstanding qualifying in fourth. Outstanding to hold Carlos Sainz behind him in fourth. Now that we saw what Carlos Sainz in the race, I'm very glad he wasn't as angry in the sprint race. He then had a terrible set of tyres by all accounts and qualified in 18th, started 20th, finished in 15th. What I loved about this, Campy, is that at the press conference after qualifying, he wasn't despondent. He wasn't sad. He was like, it just happens. This is the sport, right? And I was like, there he is. He's back. There, he's finally back. He's got some... Maybe we should be thankful for Lance Stroll for punting him up the arse to make him so angry that he had to really get some fire, Thomas J. Camp.
Oh, look, we never thought he went anywhere anyway, except for that small dim part of McLaren and his subsequent missing half a year. But, look, I was stoked to see it. That drive in the sprint race was incredible. I think what is clear with this V car is that if it gets some space on track, it can do it can manage a pace and it can keep cars behind them, as Danny Rick and Yuki in the race this morning showed that they can do as well. I think the problem with this car is when they don't qualify further up the grid than their main rivals and competitors, they get stuck in this train, and once they're stuck in that train, they don't have a lot of ammunition to pass people. A bit like Danny Rick's race this morning, got stuck behind K-Mag and just the car didn't have the top end speed or attributes of the car which are high in a specific area in order to fire some shots and make some passes. So, but stoked to see it. I think in Miami, just the weather and how hot it was and the humidity, I think across the board we saw some issues with tyres this weekend. A bit like MotoGP, and what happens is when these tyres travel from a destination to another, depending on how high the tyre is up on in the container ship that it comes over, the humidity in those containers are a hell of a lot higher. So they're going through heat cycles and cold cycles, not just at the track, but whilst in transit. And that can have a lot of effect on different tyres. And I think we saw it across the board this weekend where, yes, they're exactly the same out of the factory, but depending on where they'd sat, where they'd been, had an effect. So Lando's tyres in the sprint race qualifying were horrendous, but he showed some definite pace. It's the same with Danny Rick this weekend. He just got on these tyres, and when you're wheel spinning off the last turn onto the straight on a brand new set of rubber, it spells some trouble. So I'm not too fussed about Danny Rick's lap in the actual qualifying, but geez, it's good to see him back.
Yes,
that's exciting.
There he is.
He is capable of many things, and I think Sergio Perez will be starting to just look over his shoulder a bit more than he was a couple of weeks ago. So it's exciting for us. It's exciting for us Aussie fans. See Danny Rick back in that big team. So it's going to be good.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, we've been saying this for weeks. He's not washed. He's still in with a shot. We've been called all kinds of things by idiots on the internet. If you're an idiot on the internet, good for you. But it's this pace that he's been able to get back. And the design and the development of the car is, and they have said this, in Daniel's favour. But Tsunoda is able to get his mind around this too. I mean, he didn't have a good qualifying for the sprint, but he finished in 8th. Double points for RB, first time for the sprint race. And considering points only to 8th is great. Qualified in 10th, finished in 7th. So for RB this weekend, the amount of points that they have had is phenomenal. That the elevation and the lift that would give them going into one of their home Grand Prix in next time around as we go to Imola will also be very exciting. And Freya, it just elevates, I think, the sport more generally.
Oh, absolutely. We talked about it in this way in reference to other teams before, where can I say, like, none of us like to watch teams consistently struggle either with one particular issue or with performance as a whole. Speak for yourself, Campy. So when you do see teams starting to make a step forward, it makes for better racing. It makes for better entertainment. It makes for better team dynamics. It makes for better driver development. It elevates the entire sport and every arm that kind of comes up off that, and people who work for those businesses and the subsidiaries and everything else. So it is fantastic to see teams, take that step forward and go in the right direction. And I think it's really good that both drivers, with those with the developments that they've had, are wrapping their head around it. Obviously, what we want to start seeing now is some consistency. We are a quarter way through the season, and what you hope is that there's no steps back from here, right? This is as low as we go for the next quarter of the season. Obviously, there's going to be some curveballs there with whatever, Lance doing Lance Stroll things. But at the same time, when it comes to the things that are within their control, that is where we want to just start see them stepping up even further from here. And it's, like you said, it's good for the sport. It's good for all of it.
All right, he never went anywhere, everyone. Just remember that. That's the quote that we need to go. And even my podcast producer on my other podcast said, big fan of Daniel this weekend. And he's a Brit. So there you go. You can. It is possible to like Daniel Ricciardo if you're not Australian. Mercedes, though, not too bad, but not too good. Sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit. I can't be bothered going to find that, and so just insert that in your own mind. Oh, Freya, I'll start with you because we've lost Cat.
That is the best soundbite I've ever heard. It is so. I'm listening to your podcast. I've been waiting to bring it out, and you've just used it. So very good, very good. Mercedes, geez.
Yes.
We saw some fight in Hamilton this weekend, didn't we? Exciting for him in the race this morning. I thought he drove really well with the equipment that he had. Got his arms out in a few situations, and he's a consummate professional, and he's clearly not scared. I can't remember who the pass is, but he almost had a crash with Hulkenberg and went right up against the wall. So that was excellent. George Russell struggled this weekend. I just don't think he had the balance, and I think this is the difference between George and Lewis. When the car is good and fast on track, George is very much in step with Lewis. But when the adaptability to conditions and tracks and the way the car's set up, that's where Lewis, for me, is better than George. And he drove around it, and he's like Alonso. He will always put himself in a fight, and it doesn't matter what the car's doing. He'll drive to that 110% and eke time out of it that not many other drivers can. So,
all right,
I'm just wondering if George maybe spent too much time in the sun down here in Cayman, which is where he was the week before the race, hanging out with the Stingrays and running my regular running routes, which, of course, I was not on for the first time.
No, you were too busy throwing
months.
glasses in Amsterdam. How disappointed we are that Ferrari wasn't actually blue this weekend. They previewed this beautiful blue racing suits, which still looks beautiful in person, and then there was like 3 or 4 bits on the car. It is okay, guys, to just make a one-off, completely lovely light blue car. I know probably Mr. Ferrari wouldn't have liked it, but he's not around anymore. It's okay. But Freya, Sainz, Leclerc, Sainz scrappy a little bit with Oscar. I wasn't totally stoked by that, but I mean, they were racing each other pretty hard. I mean, it's hard to say one way or another if I'm happy about it or not. I'm not happy about it. Of course I'm not.
We're never happy about it when it involves our boy Oscar, and it gets risky and you start sitting on the edge of your seat a little bit more because you don't quite know who's going to be the sensible of the two in those scenarios. So yeah, look, I don't mind this side of Sainz though. Like, he is a driver. He's obviously driving for a seat next year. He is driving for his career in a lot of ways. And not so much whether he has one, but where it's going to be. And I think he wants to show the fight that he has in him. As we've said before, he is a driver who is very easily written off as being kind of the second tier seat in a team. And I think he's really showing that that's not the role that he intends to play wherever he goes next. And I'm really enjoying seeing this fight come out of him. Obviously, please don't hit Oscar. Oscar, please don't hit Sainz. We like both of you. But I'm enjoying seeing this side of him. I'm really enjoying seeing this feistiness that, this pressure is kind of putting on him, that this is how he's responding, because when you are under pressure like this, it's not always the case that you respond in the way that he is driving. Sometimes it is mistakes here and there. We saw it with Checo last year as kind of stories were being told about his seat and all this, that and the other. He really started affecting his performance. And I think Sainz, he's responded to it in a really positive way, focusing on what's under his control, and that's his driving. And so I'm loving it. I'm loving seeing the feisty Sainz of 2024. Loving it.
Yeah, Campy, do you know what? I think he's coming to the realization that he's driving for Sauber next year, because I just don't see that Red Bull seat opening. I mean, at least Perez is doing enough to stay. Why pull Sainz in? Verstappen is the golden boy. So as long as he's able to be golden and sparkle, then it almost doesn't matter who's driving next to him in a lot of ways. And Mercedes want Antonelli. So I wonder now if this kind of driving that Freight has said, we're sort of seeing this develop now into being a little bit maybe more elbows out, is also just an extension of his frustration at his own situation.
Oh, look, I think if you compare the two drivers, they're going to have weekends where they get strong results, and neither one of them is going to absolutely dominate or beat the other person consistently every weekend, week out. You're going to get these for small fluctuations. The key is that when you're behind your teammate, make sure you're right behind him. And Sainz has done everything right this year in the positions that he's put himself on track. And then this morning, where he was behind and things happen in qualifying, he is right behind his teammate, and they are neck and neck in everything they do. And that's the key point. I like his attitude this year. I think last year he played a bit more of a team game when he needed to. But the gloves are off this year. I think if the roles were reversed at the start of the race this morning, where Leclerc was behind Sainz and clearly had some pace, then I think they would have asked Sainz to move over for Leclerc. But the reality is that they're in a situation where he's not driving for them next year. So Sainz doesn't have to play that team game like he previously has, and he just continued to do that this weekend. So it will be frustrating, because I think at some point the organisation will limit what he can do on track via strategy and stuff to keep Charles ahead, because we know Ferrari likes to keep the narrative right about the direction they've got, and that's definitely not been the narrative has definitely not been the case on track this year, just because of the way Sainz is performing. But hey, I'm enjoying that battle, and the blue looked great. I'd still love to see a bright yellow Ferrari at some stage. I reckon that'd be awesome, but I'm not sure we'll ever see it.
Let's move on to Red Bull. Verstappen had dominance all the way through until the race, of course. His tyres, the car didn't suit, many things. But as he said, post-race, second ain't too bad. Perez qualified and finished third in the sprint, qualified fourth of the Grand Prix, finished fifth. After going, do you know who I should channel off the start? Danny Kvyat. That's a good idea, Campy.
The torpedo. Yeah, look, he got away with that one this morning, didn't he? That could have been a diabolical set of events this morning, and it would have played into our boy Oscar Piastri's. But, yeah, look, what P2 for Max. looked clearly the fastest when he was in front on track this weekend. And this sport throws up jeopardy at times with safety cars, and wrong place, wrong time for Red Bull. I think they would have gone on to win the race had it not been for that perfectly timed safety car for, Lord Lando Norris. But, hey, P2 ain't too bad.
Ain't too bad. Let's round this out with McLaren. Freya, Oscar Piastri, a dominant start. One of the things that I think most of us were feeling frustrated by was, and look, everyone's happy for Lando. Fair enough. He finally got his first win after Russia. He drove very well. He made advantages of all of the things that he needed to make advantage of. But the start from Oscar, aside from it being called incorrectly by Sky, they didn't even think about who it was. They just said Lando straight away. No, it was Oscar who had a phenomenal start. This is a building of character moment for our boy Freya.
He's going to have a few more of these as well, I think. We obviously had really high hopes for him coming into this season in particular. Obviously, we are very aware of his talent. We've seen it in his junior categories, and we saw it last year. Obviously, he's already had success there, and I think we were really hoping that this season he would just kind of dominate from the start now that he's found his feet in the team and at this level of the sport. But this, like you said, this is character building, and there's going to be a bit more of this, I think, where he is going to be tested by both the nature of the sport, the teammate who he's up against, the environment that he is finding himself working in. I'm really intrigued. I would do anything to find out what his genuine perspective is on the McLaren environment, because the history that Zach Brown has with Lando and the way that he talks about him, if I was in that environment and that was my colleague as well as competitor, and I just kind of constantly felt like I was on the outer, and I don't know if that's the case. That's what I mean. I would be desperate to know what it's really like in that dynamic. Is what we see what he is experiencing, or is it not like that at all? I'm desperate to know what that dynamic is between those three people in particular and what Oscar's experience is like. The reason why is that I just wonder if you're ever going to get somebody's full potential from them if they always feel like, they're the poor cousin in the dynamic, right? So I worry for him sometimes. But like you said, exceptional start. I saw the start. I was actually out and there was no commentary and stuff, and I saw that and I was like, oh my God, our boy, great start, off we go. And I had to I got in the car and drove home so that I could watch it with the commentary, and I was like, this is going to be his race, and then it wasn't. But yeah, as far as Lando goes, look, this must be such a weight off his shoulders. It was interesting they said, this is a record that he will now, he doesn't, get rid of that record of being the longest, what is it, most podiums with no wins. And I was like, no, he's still going to hold that record until somebody else beats what he has done. Like, the record doesn't vanish now that he's won a race. That he will still hold that, which I was just found amusing. But yeah, it is what it is.
Campy, your whole thoughts on McLaren?
It took Lando 3.5 years to get a win in a McLaren, longer than what it did Danny Rick. So if you want to put that down to races, Danny Rick only needed 10 races. It took Lando, 120 odd. So look, I'm happy enough for Lando. I don't love the kid. He drives me insane. I hated the commentary around it. They're trying to say, there's some genuine pace in that car this week. He would never have won that race if that safety car did not come out from a dumb K-Mag juvenile mistake. So let's just leave that there. Congratulations, he got his first win, and we'll all hail Lord Lando until the next race and blah, blah. As for our boy Oscar, what a superstar of a kid. He's the unassuming guy in that team. Yes, I'd love to know what the dynamic is too, but I think Oscar at some stage will start to play that card in the media when they have to. They've been pretty consistent. They've been pretty close this year. I still think Lando, results-wise and on track, has probably got him by maybe half a tenth, but they are very, very close together as in their capabilities. You've got to remember they had upgrades this weekend. Oscar only got half of them. Lando got all of them. And that says about the pecking order in the team too. But I don't think Oscar needs to worry about that. He's only in his second year of his career. And I just wanted to say, I freaking, the joy this sport gives me is immense generally. But sometimes this sport just reaches out and grabs my heart and just fucking destroys it. I could not believe when that safety car came out.
Yeah.
I thought Piastri was on, and a bit of luck and it could have gone his way. He didn't do anything wrong this weekend, and in a car that's on paper without the updates of his teammate to beat him in a race and beat him in a qualifying session, so it's one each for both. And kudos, claps to that kid, big star of the future, and we might have to get our own dedicated Legends jumper just to Oscar Piastri for that one.
Go.
So,
Yeah.
Now, what I would say, lots of you in the Discord, thank you for being part of it. Lots of you disgusted, lots of throwing up emojis about
I
the
still
Sky
hate
F1.
Lando.
And Sky F1, look,
Oh my goodness.
here's the problem, right? If Daniel Ricciardo won and the three of us were in Fox Sports Australia broadcast and that was the world feed, we would be accosted for exactly the same behaviour. So I am happy enough for Sky F1 to be stoked for Lando. They all know him well enough. They all know his dad and all of his management and the whole UK thing. I get that. That's fine. The real problem here is Fox Sports Australia, ESPN, or your local broadcaster of choice that decides to spend money with Sky F1 to have the broadcast rather than F1. F1 TV is its own package. I can't get it on KO. Apparently, if you have one of the old Foxtel set-top boxes here in Australia, you can access it. But they spend money on doing that. Now, I'm trying my best to try and change that from an Australian point of view, but just write to Fox Sports Australia and tell them you're sick of it. I don't mind. It's the UK broadcaster. There is no chance in hell of them ever thinking about anyone outside of the UK when Lando is going to win. So I don't mind that. We just need to be able to step up our own broadcast team or person or whoever on the ground to be able to combat it a bit, because you can be excited for him without absolutely crushing everyone else's dreams where they just turn the television off the last lap. Freya.
I agree with the other countries needing to put the money in funding their own teams to provide our own broadcast. Completely agree with that. I disagree that they don't have a responsibility to provide a broadcast to the ones who are buying it whereby they are not biased towards the British drivers. And I go back to that video of that 12-year-old who costed Ted and was like, oh, well, obviously you're going to
I trust you.
go on about Mercedes, da-da-da. And he goes, what are you talking about? And the defensiveness was visceral. And that says everything about it. How dare you say I'm biased? And I was like, you called it Lando today off the start and it was Oscar. That shows how subconscious it is, but it's there and it's so frustrating. And the thing is though, if you are a British person who loves Formula One, maybe you're not a Lando fan and you're like, can we talk about another driver for a minute? I know it's different. This was his weekend. That's fine. But this isn't the only weekend this has happened. So it goes beyond the nationality thing and just to the driver thing. It's like, oh my goodness, are you capable of talking about another driver as much as you talk about these three drivers? And that doesn't. I was like, that's poor commentary in my view. You've got an entire field here of 20 drivers. Talk about them all.
Yep, it's got to change, and we're over it. It's the problem is, Freya, they just won't change. They've had plenty of opportunities to change, and they can't be bothered. And I said this a couple of weeks ago, and someone said, "Great spray at Sky F1." It's not their fault. It's genuinely everyone else's fault for buying that, and not saying, "Hey, can you dial it back a bit? We spend so much money with you each year. There is ability to feed it back in." I don't, from what I'm aware, there is no feedback back for that sort of stuff. Anyway. That's it. That's the Miami Grand Prix. It's done and dusted. We can all get over it now. Lando's finally won a Grand Prix. Apparently he's going to win many, many more. Danica Patrick took a selfie with Donald Trump. And that's probably all you need to know. In terms, though, of some fun things. Let's round this lengthy episode out with some fun things. Let's talk about a fantasy team name competition. Thank you to you if you have joined. If you'd like to join at any time, you are welcome to. You can find the link in the description or on our website, and the winner will get some merchandise at the end of the year and our favourite name, which we'll decide at the end of the year. Here are some names that I found for this round. Concordia Racing, Ethan Thomas. Yes, the discussion around the Concord agreement we haven't had. Actually, I'm just going to very quickly... Oh, no, I'll kick this to next week. Campy,
Bumper to news.
Remember Congress being annoyed that there's anti-competitive behaviour with Formula One and Andretti. We'll talk about that next week.
I wonder.
Yep. New track limits, fire. Haley from that was... China, Swamp Side Drive, Steve N. Yes, welcome.
Very good.
Welcome.
Very good.
What's Newy, Pussycat, Jerry M. Charles Feeling Blue, Angus H. Tank Slapping in Miami, Jane Wiseman, and Phony Tan Marina, Alex B. I am just waiting to see if it hasn't happened yet, but there has been we've recorded for over an hour and it's now 10 past 10 in the morning here in Australia. There's still no news on K-Mag and the stewards, so we'll bring that to you next week. Our rankings for the Miami Grand Prix, I finished in 82nd. Terrible result. Luckily, I wasn't last. That was you, Freya. You finished in 87th. Campy, you finished in 65th. Well done, you. Here we go. Oh, I care about it again. Oh, I found the long end.
Back where I should be.
I'll stop it.
Put that way.
First, in Miami, was Back to Business. Daniel Blackman, well done to you. Second, Bronny Team 2, Bron Collier. And third, Lindley Team 3, Lindley Collier. The Collier family needs to update their team names. That is...
yes, please do so.
What you need to do. But that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to support the show, the best thing you can do right now is subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on any of the podcast platforms. We are on TikTok. Can confirm. None of us have access to the TikTok because we've got our video editor, CJ, is uploading for us. Hooray! So we don't have to have the app. But it's been a pleasure to talk with all of you about the Miami Grand Prix. Next up, Imola. As I said, plenty to go through in all of the news and plenty of stuff really still to come out of the Miami Grand Prix for this. But that's it for this episode. Campy, thank you to you.
Thank you to you, Jim and Freya. Excellent Herculean effort on that marathon, Freya. Just love it for you. It's awesome.
Oh, thank you, Campy. You're the best.
I'm not even going to say thanks to you, Freya.
That's what I want.
That's it. No, I'm editing it out. See you next time on Lakeside Drive.
See ya.
I feel better after this. I was so sad after that Grand Prix. I was like, fucking Oscar, it should have been your weekend. And Lando, you're a fuckwit. And Daniel, where are you? And I was really sad. And now I feel better.